Hey, everybody.
Hello. Welcome, welcome.
So, we're here to talk about diversity and inclusion. And I just wanted to start with why, right? So, if you know me, I'm Nikki Silvestri, and I've been doing climate change and food systems work and regenerative agriculture, that kind of stuff, for the majority of my career. But I've focused really on the social equity side of that. So, working with underrepresented populations. And over time, I started doing more diversity, equity, and inclusion work in organizations and businesses. I've had a lot of those clients over the last year or two and have seen some of the same trends going on with them in terms of what not to do. And so I started getting into,
Right?
yeah, right. So I started getting into some of those conversations with Nikita here. And we wanted to take some of those conversations public to be helpful and also to see what you're struggling with because some of the stuff's really common and we wanted to make sure to set the record straight. So that's a little bit about my why and who I am and why I'm here. Nikita, what about you?
Yeah, I think that's perfect. So I'm Nikita Williams. I'm founder of CoCreate Work, and our focus is all about company culture, really focused on purpose and how purpose is important for companies. And so when I am out and about, I get a lot of questions around diversity, equity, and inclusion and how that feeds and connects to company culture. And one of the main things that I always say is that you can't really successfully implement any DEI changes or strategy without thinking about the entire culture together. And so I've been having those conversations with Nikki as we think about everything from like how we hold a meeting to how we hire. We need to be thinking about what the culture of the company is and organizational design as we bring people in and make them feel included and a sense of belonging. So it all goes together. And that is why I am excited to be having the conversation today, Nikki.
All right, so let's jump in and let's just get real. What you just
Yeah,
said
let's do it.
reminded me of my last few clients and some of those common threads and why company culture is such a thing with diversity, equity, and inclusion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, y'all. So we're just gonna do some real talk right now. When I get hired to do diversity and inclusion work, usually I come in and I do an assessment, right? Which is just in company culture work, you do assessments. You try to see what's there so that you know where to go. And usually that assessment brings up a lot of really good stuff in terms of what people
Mm-hmm.
are struggling with diversity and inclusion and what they want to see. But half the time, so let's just get into some definitions first, too. So, diversity is demographics, right? Equity is about fairness, and inclusion is about the ability to fully participate. And so much of what happens on the equity and the inclusion side is company culture stuff.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of my clients don't have regular meetings or they don't know how decisions get made because the leadership team doesn't have a regular space to meet. And that's something that feels pretty low bar to me, but it's just not in a lot of companies or businesses or organizations, how often they meet, whether they have effective meetings. So do people actually come to the meetings? I had one client where the whole team didn't get together more than like once a quarter. And I know if you
Wow.
right? And if you have a bigger company, I can kind of see that, but then you need smaller ways to interact. So then if there were things that we came up with in the diversity and inclusion assessment, they had no way to penetrate within the organization because there weren't existing
Mm-hmm.
structures, which is how the company ran, that would allow those things to actually take place. That's a huge one I see, meetings.
Yeah, I agree. I think meetings have a big impact. And so there's been a lot of conversations recently around like don't have too many meetings. And I certainly agree with that.
Yeah.
But also meetings need to be clear and they need to be focused. So what the research shows is that clear, efficient decision making processes, they lead to increasement in innovation and agility and flexibility engagement. And as you're planning and thinking about how often you have meetings, also what does the structure of those meetings look like? So how do we ensure that people can fully participate? And that is some of the work that I engage with in clients when we partner in co-create work. How often do we meet? What are the topics that we're covering? How do we make sure that we create space for everyone to contribute? And also, are we making a decision in this meeting? And what are the structures and processes we need to put in place to get to a decision at the end of the meeting and not have people leave out and either not implement, or we didn't get the best solution presented because everyone didn't have access to speak up. And you have to be really intentional about that. So I hear, intentional sometimes can be a buzzword for things that are kind of woo, but when I think about like how we implement culture and strategy within a company, you have to be intentional and you have to plan. And so that's a big part of implementing like organizational design when you think about how it connects to company culture. Absolutely. So when you think of it, oh, go ahead, Nikki.
Yeah. So you were talking about engagement, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm actually even curious myself. What does that mean to you? What is poor engagement?
Yeah.
What are the consequences of engagement?
And I think for engagement, what people are usually thinking about is, how productive their team is or an employee is in the work that they're doing. Do they feel a sense of flow and really are able to get like a lot done and in contribution of the company? What I will say is there's a lot more to be said for like experience. So in order for an employee to be engaged within the company, the experience first has to be right. And what kind of employee experience are you creating? So when we think about experience, what is it like for an employee to have an initial conversation with you, to interview with you? What does their day-to-day work look like? How do they experience meetings? Even how do they experience things outside of the office? And we all know now, like the social and political climate has a huge impact back on employees in their personal lives. And there's no really separation between personal and professional. So we want people to bring their whole self to work. And that means we have to create an experience that's conducive to that. So before we can even get to engagement, what I like to challenge people to think about is like, what is the experience that we're creating here and what does that feel like? So you wanted me to talk about engagement. I'm super curious to hear from you around equity. So we hear equity coming up more and more in the DEI conversations. And I feel like people have a sense of what diversity is, a sense of what inclusion is, but what does equity look like and how do you talk to your clients about equity?
Yeah, so what's funny is that, so the definition of equity versus equality, let's just start there, right? There's a beautiful graphic that gets thrown out a lot where there's these three dudes and they're standing on, there's like,
I've seen it.
One of them's really short and so you can't see over the fence. One of them's right at the fence and one of them's really tall. And equality is where they all get the same thing to stand on. So they're all basically in the exact same position they were before, just a little bit higher. So the person who was taller is taller. But then equity is where everybody gets a box that allows them all to be at the same level. And I've also heard it said that equality is everybody gets a pair of shoes, and equity is that everybody gets a pair of shoes that fit, right?
Okay.
A lot of the equity issues that I see coming up inside of businesses and organizations are about fair pay and are about policies when it comes to maternity leave, when it comes to policies, when it comes to disability. There's a lot of things that are legally required, but have an increasingly diverse workforce when it comes to faiths, when it comes to all different kinds of things. How are you creating a company culture where there's equity between the employees and their experience that are built into the policies and the procedures of your organization that also goes for high performance? And it's sophisticated and it's nuanced. Equity means that you actually have to know the people that work for you. And that may seem like common sense. It's not common sense.
Well, common sense is, and also common practice, right? It's the difference between the knowing and doing.
But even knowing, right? Like, what does knowing mean? I recently had where they were surveying their employees on a regular basis. So the leadership thought that they were getting a lot of the information that they really wanted and needed from the employees.
Mm-hmm.
But surveys are only one drop in the bucket. There's related
Absolutely.
infrastructure required to get underneath the words that someone says so that you understand their meaning, so that you understand tone, so that you understand context. And it's only when you understand tone and context that you can create policies for equity that actually make sense for your business or your corporation. And so that's where having relationship-driven infrastructure that's related to high performance is really important. And I want to pull that apart a little bit because people are like, what are you talking about? So emotional intelligence
Mm-hmm.
is really important.
Kind of important.
Really
Thinking the
important.
same thing. And and I'll just add in here quickly, it's a skill, and it's a skill that can be developed in anyone. So it's not one of the things that some people have and some people don't. But I think in the past, maybe we've been encouraged not to bring that to work, or it's not seen as something that's valuable. And that is a lot of the work that we still have yet to do. But continue. I just also feel really passionate about that. I'm glad you brought that.
Actually, so before I continue, I'd love to hear from you about emotional intelligence and how you see it playing out concretely in the workplace for people, both in good and bad ways.
Yeah. So first, the point that I just made is that emotional intelligence, or like EQ, is being used in a way as a buzzword, but it's also been assigned this title of a soft skill. It's just a skill, period. And it's something that's important to the work that we do, the same as innovation or anything else. In fact, it enables things like innovation and collaboration and effectiveness at meetings together. So when I think about emotional intelligence, the other rule to me is that anyone can learn this and pick this up and then effectively execute it on how we work together and partner together inside of our workplaces. Is that the question? I think I went I went a little bit on a tangent about but I will have one.
Why
Go ahead.
Have emotional intelligence? Is that a problem?
Say that again.
Why, if you don't have emotional intelligence, is that a problem?
Yeah, why, if you don't use and develop that skill of emotional intelligence, why is that a problem? Well, frankly, it's how we get everything done, right? If we can't be in conversation, communication, collaboration, if we can't challenge each other effectively, if we can't negotiate together effectively and make agreements that we all stand by together, then we're not going to be effective in how we get the work done. So what I would think is that if we think about what are mechanisms for work, there are also mechanisms around this idea of emotional intelligence and how we communicate together, but we can't meet and deliver on those mechanisms if we're not strong in the area of emotional intelligence.
Dang, Nikita. That's real. I would also say one way that it shows up for me with my clients is in the area of conflict, internal conflict. Without emotional intelligence that's distributed throughout the organization, right? Not just at the leadership and not just at the staff level. If it's not spread throughout, then there's all these small fires raging all the time. Interpersonal conflict, staff equity issues when it comes to fair pay, like that folks aren't and that are getting in the way of their performance. Just issues when it comes to bias and folks feeling cliques or silos or things like that. All of those are small fires that tend to just be raging all the time. And the leadership, the company will spend an inordinate amount of time managing internal conflict in a way that actually interrupts high performance, right? Emotional intelligence and implementing it means that you can proactively manage your relationships on your team for high performance instead of reactively dealing with conflict that interrupts your ability to do high performance. Right. So a lot of times it's this proactivity, reactivity thing that I find is huge.
Absolutely. I think you're right on the money. And also, I'm thinking about this idea of like design and why design is important. Things either happen with intention or, like you said, they just happen as a reaction to what's going on. And it's really important that we understand that having an effective culture happens on purpose. So you have to design for it, and there are systems and things that you do and put into place in order to have a more effective culture. And I think everyone wants that, but maybe not think about like what are some potential solutions. And I think as we talk about DEI and the strategy of DEI, you have to also talk about what is the overall culture of the company and how you bring those two things together. You have to be like, or think about intentionality when planning for those. One tool, as you were talking, just to take us back a little bit about surveys, because I do think like data, quantitative data is super important, but also qualitative data is super important. And I think you hinted to that, which is what are the conversations that we're having? So one thing that you can do, audience or anyone listening, is like engage in and bring these two conversations rather than just surveys. Pull together a group of people inside your organization. One tool that we use is the retrospective. So like 3 questions: what's working? Where are we stuck? What might we do differently? Capturing that information, and it really gives you some things and stories about how people are experiencing your culture, and also how are they experiencing DEI.
I love that, the real-time offering of a tool. And I just got this gut hit in our conversation about why is this important? I think there's some underlying assumptions here about what we mean and why high performance and why that's even important. It is to make money, for sure. And I'm going to get to that in just a second in terms of making money. But why did I want to get on Facebook Live and talk about this today? And why is it really on my heart? And I feel like it's because the wildfires just happened in California here. I'm one of those people that will start crying if you ask me too many questions about biodiversity and species extinction and all the things, because my work in ecology and soil and stuff it's a calling for me. And I even have something of a spiritual orientation toward working with people and building community. I feel like relationships are the thing that's going to heal whatever it is that drives us to do the things that we do to each other as humans.
Absolutely.
And the people that are going to be leading, and then social equity is just, it's almost too big a thing to talk about, right? Police brutality. And we're both sisters, the things happening to Black folks every day. I have spent so long in my career looking at dysfunctional nonprofits that have these big, beautiful missions, and they are not able to execute on these big, beautiful missions because their company culture is screwed. Like at the end of the day, that's what's on my heart about why I'm coming to talk about this today, is because I feel like the people who have the drive to actually solve and meet really hard, big problems they don't have the tools, or they need the support to actually be high performance enough to keep Black kids from being killed by the cops. Like the kind of work that these people are doing, it's really important work. And for-profits. I love for-profits. I am a for-profit right now, And real talk, I have a master's degree in Black studies, and looking at the wealth inequalities and the wealth that has been extracted from the African American community for such a long time. I am trying to balance that scale by building wealth myself and having something to pass on to my son and hopefully other children that I have, So women-owned companies, people of color-owned companies, those companies being profitable because we know what's up when it comes to actually fixing this planet and fixing our society is beyond important to me. So this is high performance is what's going to save. That's high performance equals changing the world in my mind. That's why this stuff is so important to me. And I think I just wanted to bring it down a little bit and reset around that.
No, I think that's so powerful. And thank you for sharing that. It makes me think about purpose. And purpose is something that drives me professionally and personally. And that I encourage companies, founders, leaders to think about constantly. When you are focused on purpose and the impact that you want to have, you're able to achieve amazing things. What gets in the way of purpose, though, is not having the right systems and structures in place to then support it. So the transformation comes in identifying and knowing that purpose and then having the right supports in place. So similar to you, like my purpose is around like creating purpose-driven companies. And that means for-profit as well as nonprofit. As a matter of fact, my career is all pretty much in for-profit companies. And recognizing that I want founders, I want leaders to stay in business, to be successful, especially those that are purpose-driven. So any company, regardless of what you're doing, unless you're doing harm, of course, you can be a purpose-driven company. That designation is not, say, for nonprofit, but you do have to think about and plan and be intentional on what that means. So that is why the work is so important to me, is that I want purpose-driven companies to be successful so then we can make a huge impact and make a difference.
Okay, so let's talk about that huge impact and making.
Yeah.
What do you see as the transformation when you work with companies and then they do company culture right? What's possible?
Yeah. So first of all, just start with the individual. It changes the lives of individuals within your organization. And I will say that again, it changes lives of the individuals within your organization. So when you have equitable pay, when people have the opportunity to learn and work on something that's transformational, when people have a sense of belonging, then they're going to have more access to things like healthcare. Mental health is going to be better because there is some research coming out that shows that work can negatively impact our mental health. So the transformation for each individual is huge, but the transformation for you as an organization, a founder, or a company is huge as well because it has an impact on the community. So you're going to be more likely to be innovative. You're going to stand out in the marketplace. You're going to attract the right talent. So it's a continuous circle around what the inputs that you're putting in and the outputs that happen, and then getting those inputs back in again. In addition to that, you're going to have a huge kind of positive, I think of it as a ripple effect across not just your industry and what you do, but across the communities that you engage with. Everything from who your vendors are to clients and customers who purchase from you. So the impact is, yes, you're going to make more, you're going to be more competitive in the market, you're going to be more innovative, but you're ultimately going to make that true difference, which is probably why you started this business in the first place, for sure.
Say it again for the people in the back.
Say yes. That's awesome.
You know, and what you said about more money, I think I want to get to the for-profit transformation and then the nonprofit transformation. And so for profit, I just want to lift up some stats because you just talked about more money. So in your sector, right, if you're a business and you're in the top 25% of businesses in your sector when it comes to racial and ethnic diversity, you're 35% more likely to make more money than your competitors, right? And if you're in that top quarter of the businesses in your sector when it comes to gender diversity, you're 15% more likely to make more money than your competitors. And what if you're getting this wrong, right? If you're in that bottom quarter when it comes to your sectors, when it comes to diversity, you're actually lagging. You're not making just money in people and you're not just not leading. You're actually lagging. So this has diversity has a very clear through line when it comes to one's ability to make money. And when I talk to female founders as well, the being able to be competitive in terms of financials in their sectors is huge. So that's why I feel like it's so important to talk about profit there. And on the nonprofit side, diversity, equity, and inclusion leads to the types of solutions to the big problems that are actually going to work. I don't know if there's any other way to say it. These big problems.
Yeah, across companies. Like I'll say that one. I'm going to say amen to that one for both profit and nonprofit. Better solutions. Look, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, and so part of what I think about there is that they're being able, genius and people who are seen as geniuses throughout history, they were just able to be kind of futurist in the way that they thought, and they were able to conceive of a context for the problem that was way larger than most people. So the more you can expand your context for how you approach whatever you see as the problem, the more you're going to be able to come up with solutions that are truly revolutionary.
Yeah, absolutely.
Context. You get different types of people at the table. The more diverse your context, the more revolutionary and innovative you're going to be. It's just a very clear through line. And then that leads to profit, that leads to sustainability, and for me, the tree hugger, earth lover, we got to be as innovative as possible as far as I'm concerned. Okay, so let's wrap this up. Any last thoughts from you, Nikita?
Yeah, I was thinking something was coming to me as you were wrapping that up. And I think it's what we initially started with as well. In order, though, to harness that diversity, you have to be thinking about the systems, the processes, the purpose of the company. So that's going to all come together with your strategy for DEI combined with your strategy for company culture and organizational design. And I think so. I think what you said is so powerful. And I want people to really understand it and sit with that. But we would love to hear from you. So Nikki, I know you're going to make an offer for people to reach out and share their thoughts and questions.
Yeah, and right before I do that, I think I just want to highlight what you just said, Nikita, that part of the way that I think of diversity and inclusion and company culture is that in a lot of ways, diversity, equity, and inclusion is the outcome that you're looking for. But how you get to that outcome is company culture, right? It's your systems and your structures and your policies. Nobody ever undid systemic discrimination by having a nice report. You got to do something with the report, and how you do that report is your company culture. Holla.
Yeah.
So if you're interested, so first of all, if you're watching this, even any part of it, I would love to see you in the comments and to list your name along with your company or business or organization. And I'd also just love to hear how you're experiencing diversity and inclusion in company culture within your company, right? So I'd love to hear that. And just any other questions that come up for you. And if you want to talk to Nikita and I about any of this, we would love to hear from you. So put a message in the comments and or send me a direct message. Send me or Nikita a direct message. Okay? Thank you so much.